A second to get on. There we go. Hi, Angel.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
All right, awesome. So today's special guest for our Real Estate B School Monday member spotlight call, our special guest is Angel Garcia. And Angel, before we get started, I just want to make sure that you're prepared to share the good, the bad, and the ugly about your team in your business journey.
We're going to be here all day if I had to talk about the ugly.
Okay, perfect. We've got all the time in the world. That's what everybody wants to know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so Angel, I want you to just take a minute, tell us about you personally. I know you have some exciting things coming up in September. So tell us about you personally, and then give us an overview of your real estate business.
Okay. So I am, as far as September goes, I'm getting married in September, so it's coming soon. So I got a lot of things going on. Right now, I've been in the business for about 5 years, going on 6 years. I got started with my dad, and over the last couple of years, it's started to luckily grow, and I've made a lot of mistakes. And thanks to Stacy, she kind of keeps putting me in the right direction. I've grown to a little bit over 100 transactions last year, on pace for about 140, 150 this year. And a lot of our business also includes flips. So I do a lot of flip properties, fix and flips. So that's about it, I guess.
Awesome. So start us off with, and I didn't prepare you for this, but a favorite success quote. So one that, maybe you look at when things aren't easy, or maybe you just kind of refer to, while you've been building your business.
That's a good one. You didn't prepare me for that one, but I have so many good ones, and some of my best quotes are always from Jim Rohn. So, and I can name a ton of them, but I'm not good at naming them exactly how they come out, but I can kind of go over what the quotes mean, because I don't want to fumble them all up.
Yeah, give us one or two that really kind of have stuck with you.
Well, two of them that have stuck with me. One of them is always like, you are who you surround yourself with. So I've always worked really hard at putting people that are doing really well around me, or finding people that are doing really well. So it's made a big difference. And then the other quote would be, always do a little bit more than what you're getting paid for. So whatever work you're doing, and whatever you're getting paid, put in double, triple the effort, and you'll become. And actually, I remembered one of the quotes. First, you must become before you have. Or, no. Something along those lines. I'm fumbling all over the place because I'm not prepared for it, but it's something along those lines. And someone on here probably already knows the quote, so they'll correct me, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for those that are joining us on video, you have a quote kind of behind you that says, "Work until you no longer need to introduce yourself."
Yeah.
What made you choose to hang that quote up?
I'm all about hard work. I've always felt that, without hard work, you're not going to be able to attain much. I know that we're always working towards, freeing up a lot of our time. My thing is, if there's any opportunity for me to be able to do this much more, I'm okay with putting in whatever work it takes. All I need to know is the path. As long as I know the path, I'll put in whatever work it takes to at least achieve the goal.
That's cool. What do you think that work ethic and that hard work, how has that catapulted you and your team over these last few years?
Well, it's done a lot. One of the things is that the team sees how hard I work, because I put in a lot of effort, and I'll grind it out. I'll be in here. I'll be the first one in. I'll be the last one out. I take no shame in working my butt off. So, over the years, they've started seeing it, and I've got guys in here that are always challenging me to see if they can put in more effort or more time than I can. So it does make a big difference.
Yeah, that's really cool. I want to ask you a question around that. Is there something specific you look for when you are hiring agents that, sort of match this type of work ethic? Because your team, and we'll talk about it, but your team really puts in a lot of work on the phones, and they really, make that effort every single day for hours. And so what do you specifically look for when you are hiring agents, or how do you think you are attracting agents like that fits the model you would like to build?
So what I'm always looking for is I'm looking for like good work ethic and then good values. Like I want good people more than anything. Like number one above everything else, I'm looking for like good people that I feel like I can trust, that I just have high ethics. Work ethic, that's something that I feel like it's hard to train somebody. You know, if they're not, if they don't have that in them, it makes it really difficult. So like I'll ask people like, what does your schedule look like? You know, I want to get an idea of like what their productivity level is just on their own without any accountability. And I know that if they have the work ethic there, if I can see that they're trying and they're putting in effort, then all they need is like, you know, a roadmap. Then I know I've got the right person. So that's good for me.
That's really good. And is there anything specific, you know, I feel like sometimes one challenge with, you know, people building a real estate business is really finding out if people have work ethic or personal discipline. How do you interview? Is it part of the interview process that you find out if they do have this work ethic, or is it, you know, standards on the team and then consequences? You know, how does it look in your process?
So like when I'm hiring people, I ask them for like their schedule, and I ask them for like successes. Like, tell me what you think a good day of hard work is, right? So by hearing what they think is hard work, then I know what level of like work ethic they really have, right?
Yeah.
The other thing too is that I put a lot of accountability measures. So like we talk about it all the time. I put this daily pipeline scorecard that helps out a ton. And what I'm tracking is all of the activities, right? With like our weekly success tracker. Well, I took it down to like a daily, and I said, okay, how many calls are you doing? How many contacts? And, you know, how many overdue follow-ups you have? And I put it up and post it up every morning so that way everybody can see. But I can clearly see if someone's doing like the minimum standard for the team. They have their own personal goals, but they have the team standards that they have to hit. And it's all based around like them putting in the work. Because you know, I can give everybody all the systems in the world, but if they're not putting in the work, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. And with hiring too, you know, I find, and you've probably seen it too, it's not easy, right, to let people go because, you know, you've invested time in them. Maybe they become like family, and you've had turnover in your team as well. How do you look at, you know, making the right decisions for the business versus getting expectations hung up on the person? So, you know, instead of making decisions because you like the person, how do you do it so you make the best decision for the business?
I let the business do it itself. So like all the the accountability and the scorecards, I set it up so that way it's done by my virtual assistant. So I have a virtual assistant that'll come in every single night, and they'll pull up the agent's number of calls through the system, like through our CRM. We use Follow Up Boss, and then also through Mojo, because we do a lot of Mojo calls. They'll pull all those numbers up. They'll look at all the overdue follow-ups. They'll look at how many leads they have in their pipeline and stuff. And if they're not following up, it highlights in red the next morning. So they get cut off on leads, and they're being held accountable just by the system alone. So it's just put into place. I don't have to go in and tell them, hey, you're not hitting your numbers. That's why you're off of leads. They know exactly why they're off of leads because it shows up the next morning on the scorecard, and I don't have to do it myself. So I don't feel bad for it.
Yeah. And that scorecard's displayed in your office?
Yeah, I have it on a screen, and wait, I'll show you real quick. I don't have it up right now. We were doing a little Monday meeting, but it's right there.
Oh, yeah, right on TV.
Yeah.
So for those of you that aren't on video, he has a TV screen up in the agent area, and then that scorecard is always displayed so they can see how they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And I love how you've really taken accountability. I love what you said about accountability isn't dependent on the person. The business makes the decisions. So it's evident what's happening. So that was really great.
It happens automatically. They get held accountable, but based on like the criteria that we've set. So we have certain expectations in the team, and if they're not hitting them, they just automatically get removed out. And then at some point, it's just like they're not getting any leads, and then we have a conversation of what needs to be done, and they either have to go or they realize very quickly that this isn't for them.
Yeah.
Most of the time, they actually quit before I get to do anything with them because they see it. It just happens.
Yeah, they know. Personal accountability, like you said.
Yeah.
So when, you were building your team, it's not like it came without, failures or missteps. I know at one point you had a whole bunch of agents leaving your team at one time or fairly close. So let's talk a little bit about that, that struggle, that journey. So talk about those agents that left. Why do you feel like maybe they weren't a fit, or what have you learned from them not being on the team?
So what I learned is that if someone's not a good match for the team, don't always just wait for them to leave, because I was kind of waiting for them to leave at some points. But the thing is that I did have my team take off at the very beginning of last year. And I remember I was really, really hung up on it. I was really upset. And I was like, man, and I didn't want my production to drop because of it. Because, I put all these systems in place, and I always said, like, well, the systems are what make the difference, right? Like, I can put a different person into place and we can get the same results. Well, now that was the perfect time to prove it, and mainly to myself, right? So, like, I had the team, like, buyer's agents leave for different reasons. And it was a little scary at first. And first thing I did is I had to, number one, I had to go do a bunch of buyer transactions. I had to do them because I didn't want to have bad service going out to my clients and stuff. But then I also had to hire people on, and then I had to trust that this processes and the systems that I had in place were going to work. And I found a little issues with some of the stuff that we had because I wasn't tracking set met signed well enough. But it was a learning experience. So when they left, I was forced to get a little bit better. But right away we picked up, and it was actually our best year ever. That was last year.
That's really cool.
But what I learned from it was, as soon as that the agents that they were supposed to leave, like, it was destiny. They were gonna leave, and they weren't good matches for the team anymore. But I had kept them on for so much longer, and it was painful for them, and it was also painful for myself. So, like, one of the lessons that I learned there is really just make those decisions when you need it. When you know that someone's not a good fit, don't drag it on. Just go ahead and act and follow your gut.
Yeah, for sure.
Or the scorecards.
So a couple questions around, you mentioned this is before we were talking about the agents that left your team, but when you take where do your leads go when you take your agent off of opportunity time? So when they're not hitting their numbers, where do those leads go? Do they go to the rest of the agents, or what happens with the leads?
Yeah, so we have an interesting setup. So all the leads get assigned to an agent. If the agent doesn't follow up within 1 hour, everybody has everybody can see all of the leads that we have that are coming in, right? So it created like self-accountability within the team. It's pretty cool. They have 1 hour to follow up with that lead and get a hold of them, so they can call, text, and email and do whatever they can, but get a hold of that lead. If they don't respond to that lead and they can actually have a conversation with them and convert them into a set appointment or to a hot or nurture lead or a warm lead, right, then it becomes an open lead, meaning that everybody on the team can now start attacking that lead. And I say attack, but basically going after that lead, trying to get a hold of them and convert them. So what it did is it created a lot of accountability for the team, where I don't have to be like, hey, follow up with your leads on time, do this, do that, because the team, they're afraid that the other team member is going to take their leads, right? They get really possessive over something being assigned to them. So, yeah, it's kind of like a Shark Tank.
Yeah, very cool. And then did you say that your VA is the one that cuts off the leads if they have, so next day, the scorecard there, hadn't followed up with their leads, the VA goes in and shuts them off of leads, or who takes care of that?
Yeah, so I'll have the VA pull all the numbers every night to see, how everybody did on their scorecard. Based on the scorecard, if they're either green or they're red, right? If they're green, that means that they hit their minimum standards and that they're going to stay in lead rotation. If they're red, they get removed from sign calls, Zillow calls, any incoming calls, and they also get removed from all incoming leads, email leads. So the VA handles all of that. And then the next day, if they got caught up with their numbers and they caught up with their follow-up, they will get put back on, but only if they catch back up. So they have to be in green the following day.
Very cool.
It's green or red.
Very cool. Let's see, a question. Gary, I'm not sure what system you're asking. We had a question, how does everyone see the leads, but yet it also being assigned to one agent?
So I give everybody admin rights with our system. I did the same thing with Sync. I use Follow-Up Boss for my CRM. It's my CRM of choice. I think it's a real simple system. I used to have Sync, and I did the same thing with Sync, and it made a big difference. So I gave everybody admin rights so that way everybody can see all the leads. There's nothing that's hidden. You can see any Zillow lead, any Truly lead. The reason I did that is because, number one, it creates a lot of self-accountability. So if the guys aren't, let's say, for example, changing the stages of the lead properly or writing in notes properly, the other team members get mad at them, and then they'll let them know, like, hey, man, what's going on with this? Or the other thing they'll notice is that they're not calling their leads often enough, and then they'll make fun of each other. So it creates a fun kind of culture. To answer your question, everybody gets admin rights. And then what I did is I created filters. So filters that say to catch like leads in different parts of the process. So like I have what we call our P1. A P1 is like our new lead, right? So anybody that has come into the system that hasn't received any phone calls, they all show up on one list where everybody can see it. Everybody can call everybody's lead after that 1 hour if nobody has gotten a hold of them. And then we have like our attempted, same thing. Attempted means that nobody's been able to contact them or qualify them into any stage. If they're not qualified into any stage, then they're just in a lead bucket where everybody can just keep going after the leads. The reason I did that is because I found that sometimes we would have agents that were really, really hungry. And then we had agents that were a little fat and like stuffed with like whatever leads that were working, right? They got a lot of active clients, so they're not following up properly. Well, I didn't want the agents that were really hungry to be left with not enough opportunity. And I didn't want to be giving more opportunities to the agent that's already full.
Yeah.
So it created a cool self-accountability, and it just ended up working out.
Yeah.
So.
And one thing I think talk about a little bit for everybody is you also put yourself under these same standards. So you were making calls, you were held to the same type of follow-up. Because I think sometimes, you know, us as team leaders maybe we don't even know how Mojo works. We don't even know how Set Met Signed works, but we want the agents to hit these things, but we're not ingrained in it ourselves. So can you talk a little bit about, you know, what you did to also get this kind of accountability on your team? Because it wasn't everybody's lackadaisical and all of a sudden they fall into line.
Yeah. So I'm big on lead by example. I'll make my phone calls with my team, and I've got a stand-up desk right here where I'll make my phone calls. What I'll do is I'll open up the door, and then we have like a little call pit area, and they can see me making my phone calls and setting my appointments. Whenever they get weak on their calls, what I'll do is I'll literally say, okay, cool guys, let's all jump on the phone together right now, and then I'll start booking appointments. My conversion level is obviously a lot higher because of the different skill level, but I'm really big on skills. So every morning I'm doing my own personal role plays, and I'll let them hear me. So they'll see that there's a certain level of dedication. And I think it makes a huge, huge difference. So like every morning at 7:30 a.m., I've got a role play partner, a different role play partner every single day of the week. They can come in and they can listen into those role plays, and they can also role play with me right after I finish up with my role play partners. But bottom line is what I'll do is if they're in here and they're having issues setting appointments or they're getting a little negative, I'll literally jump on the phones right then and there, and I'll show them live examples of rejection, success. Right? So I'll book an appointment with the same leads that they're saying are junk, or with the even tougher leads that are completely cold that have not mentioned anything about actual interest. Right? I'll go completely cold calls.
That's awesome. So leading by example.
Yeah.
Let's dig into your current business here a little bit. So now that we've been talking about your agents, talk about your current team structure and production. So start there, and then we're going to dig into, some of the things that you've taken away while being here.
So when I first got started in B School, it was me and my dad's a partner of the business as well, but he only does the flip. So he handles everything construction wise for our properties. let me kind of just say what I've got right now, I guess. So it's me and my dad, and we're partners. We're kind of like the face of the business, but he's really only handling the flips. He's handling everything construction related. I handle everything listings and sales related and the team and everything. And then we have buyer's agents. Right now I've got 3 buyer's agents, and then I've got one person that's making calls. And he's doing awesome. He just got started. We had last year for the production that I had 2 buyer's agents, and then it was me and again my dad as well. I had other agents that came on, but they left soon after. That was just kind of like going through basically phasing a couple of people out. I think that's pretty much the structure, but we started changing a lot of different things pretty much when I got into B school, because I had no structure. When I first got started in B school, I basically was just making a bunch of cold calls, and I had no tracking really in place other than just knowing what my contacts and how many contacts to listing appointment, contacts to listing taken, and contacts to closing. But that was it. There was nothing source related. I didn't know how to get more efficient with my calls or how to do any of that. What B school did for me is it gave me complete clarity. Like I always know what I needed to improve on and how to grow my business. I had no idea how to do that before, and it was really frustrating because I didn't know what sources were really working. I didn't know like the specifics of like efficiency. So like if I'm making 100 phone calls to expireds, or if I'm making 100 phone calls towards, let's say, just listed, just sold, like I knew that there was a difference in expireds, but putting all the tracking measures in place for set, met, and signed made a huge difference, because I can catch trends a little bit faster. Like let's say, for example, if Zillow versus Realtor.com leads, I don't have to wait 6 months to wait for the closings. I started seeing like, okay, I'm setting appointments faster with these guys. I can already see that this is working. So just tracking in general was like the big changing thing for me.
That's really cool. What's something that's really exciting for you about your business today?
I'm noticing that I don't need to do any new things. Like I was always kind of like looking, because I always thought like when I would see people doing like hundreds of transactions, I was like, man, that they must be doing like all these new shiny little objects and stuff like that, something that nobody else has ever heard of, right? And then I found out that it wasn't. It's actually pretty simple. They're just doing the foundational stuff, and they're just doing it at a high level, and they know what works and they know what doesn't work. Well, once I started B school and I started tracking everything, I realized that I don't necessarily need to look for like shiny objects and these squirrels. I just need to go deeper in the stuff that I already know is working and that I do well. And there's a bunch of stuff out there that I'm sure works, but it works at different levels. There's a couple of core things that I know how to do that I do really well that I just need to expand on and go get a little bit better at. So like I found out that I'm good at making contacts and getting listings, right? So my goal then became, let's do 1,000 contacts a week and let's start like crushing it. And right away, it was just making a big difference in our business. So anyways, I put a bunch of tracking measures in place, and then I found out that the best way to grow my business is do less of what's not working and just do more of what is.
Yeah.
That's it.
Simple. Yeah, very simple, going deep.
Yeah.
Many people on this call and other people that'll watch the video are, they're just struggling, right? They're struggling to build their team. Maybe they're not as good with numbers as you are, or maybe they just haven't had luck with, quote unquote, with their buyer agents. What kind of words of encouragement could you give people that would like to have more success in their business, but they just aren't seeing exactly what they're looking for right now?
Well, I would say that the first thing that you have to do, is just really track. I wouldn't focus on trying and one of the things that I've done. I did a bad job of initially when we got on is I started doing a lot of leads, right? So I started generating a ton of different leads, and I didn't really have the tracking measures in place. So it was kind of like a painful process because I didn't know which ones were working. Now I started spending money on things that really weren't returning the way that they could have or should have. And when you're trying to force growth like that by just buying leads, then what happens is you're not really you're probably going to do more transactions, but the thing is that you're not necessarily making a whole lot more money. And it's just because you're going in too many different directions, and you're also confusing everybody around you as well, right? So it just becomes really chaotic. So my advice would be focus on getting all your tracking measures in place, and then look at that as a way to know what you need to improve on. Don't buy into anything else other than just the simplicity of looking at like all the things that drive the profit in your business and all the things that are bringing in the money in the business. You're tracking, like knowing that, let's say for example, your conversion is lower than everybody else's. Like if you have a great group of people here with B School, I reach out to a lot of people in B School and like people from boardroom and stuff. And I'll just ask them what's working. And then like I'll identify people that are doing really, really good at what I suck at. And then I'll try to just kind of like model a lot of the stuff that they have. I'll just try to bring it into my business. So just identify with tracking what you suck at, and then look for the people in a group that you can trust, like B School, and then try to implement some of their systems, right?
I love that you're using the community, because there is power in everybody. Everybody's working toward the same thing, and that is a true profitable business. Now, all teams can look different and structures can look different, but really utilizing the community is awesome. And I know you've done that with some of your tracking things, which is cool.
Yeah.
What's something that you could share with us, but maybe you haven't, about your business? Like, we've talked a ton about tracking. What else is working for you? Maybe talk about, you personally in production yet and what that looks like, as well as managing a team. I'm sure some people have questions on that as well.
Yeah. So because of the first thing I started doing when I got into B School, which was really, really nice, is I started delegating a lot more. I didn't delegate a whole lot, so that made a big, big difference. Because then, number one is it gave me a lot more time to work on the things that I like working a lot. I'm okay with it. That's part of just who I am. I'm a workhorse. But I like working on things that I like to work on, not things that I'm forced to work on, like admin. That'll drive me nuts, right? But becoming more efficient with that, that's huge. One of the things that I noticed that started working out really well for me, I actually see that it popped up on the questions, was the flip business. The flip business started to do really, really well. And because of what I started learning in B School, as far as tracking, I got really deep into the flips as well, because they're a big profitable piece of my business right now. So like we'll do probably about 20% of our business in total this year will probably be our own personal transactions that I'm buying and fixing and reselling. And there's a lot of opportunities. So what I started to do is, and this is interesting, anybody that's out there that's doing flips, you guys will probably like how I mix the two. I have a whole team of people here, and what I realized is that one of the biggest profits for us were doing flips, right? I started getting all of the cold calls that we were doing, and instead of just doing them to, let's say, expired, I started doing them towards people that would probably be in distress, right? Going towards notice of default. And my biggest thing is that, again, it's high ethics, right? So what I do is I never wanted to kind of go walk that gray line as far as ethics versus profits. What I did, and which worked out really, really well, is I go to all these notice of defaults or probates or anybody that wants to sell a beat up property, and I offer them, hey, look, I can list the property, and this is what you can get. Or I can make you an offer for this price. And my price is very simple. I know exactly what margin of profit I need in order for me to even want to be involved with the deal. If it's 1% over, I'm just not interested. It's literally that simple. If it's like $10 over, I'm just not interested. So I know what my numbers are, like really, really tight. I'll make them an offer. It doesn't change. It doesn't move. It doesn't go up or down. I don't negotiate. It's just, this is what it is. If you want it, great. If not, let's go to the market. I'll list it for you and we can see what you get. So that ended up working out really well, and it's taking our business to another level. Yeah. The other thing is that I use that inventory to market our sign call, like to get more sign calls and stuff like that. I can hold a sign up on it for 2 or 3 months as I do the project.
And where do you get your list of like probate and default?
So I use Land Voice for a lot of the data that I use. And then the other thing that I'll do is like I'll go on to the actual MLS, and we have something called Real List. I don't know if it's in other marketplaces, but basically it lets me go into like the tax records and pull up lists of phone numbers to call. What I did is I pulled those lists, I sent it to LandVoice to give me phone numbers for it, and then I started putting in, have my VA put it into our Mojo list every morning. So every morning we have a new list of people that are potential sellers that have beat up homes, that we know have beat up homes because they got tax liens, they're defaulted on their payments, they just got hit with the notice of sale, probates, tenant evictions, certain things like that. They get filed. I look for little triggers going on that could potentially be a flip.
Yeah, very good, and not an expensive lead source at all.
It's super cheap. I only pay like I think I'm like, it's something stupid. It's like 8 to 10 cents or something like that per phone number that I get, and then it's free from Real Estate Experts from our MLS. And then I only pay my VA like $4 an hour to upload it all. So that's about it.
Very cool. So one thing you didn't mention, and I want you to talk about a little bit, is your production levels. So when you started with B School and what your production levels have looked like. And then secondly, your market. And talk about that.
So first thing is that my market is extremely, extremely competitive. So we have more agents than the number of transactions that are going on in my marketplace. So that's one of the most interesting stats that our broker likes to show us. As far as, our broker puts all these numbers out for us, and we have a lot of people that are like presidents of the board and stuff like that. So I showed the number of active agents in our marketplace. The number of transactions is like so much lower. It's ridiculous. So extremely, extremely competitive. Before B School, I was doing, I think, a 23 million or 24 million in volume. Last year we did 46 million in volume. And the difference is huge for us because it's only been like 2 years. And it's more so that the business changed so much more, not just in like the volume and the money that we're making, but in what I'm actually doing. So I'm actually doing stuff that I like. Before, I wasn't really very happy with my business because it was extremely frustrating. I didn't know what was working, what was not. And my time was literally everywhere. Yeah. And it was just like being put in all the wrong places.
Yeah, right. And it's a grind. You can do things that aren't your highest and best used for a small amount of time. But if you're not gaining traction, like you said, by knowing what's working and what isn't, it's completely an energy drain.
Yeah, the tracking is everything. It just makes such a big difference.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to ask you some questions. We call this the lightning round. So I'm going to ask you some questions, fast and furious, and then I'm going to open it up to the rest of our members for questions. So get your questions ready, and I'll read those to Angel. But what keeps you up at night when it comes to your business?
The team. I want to make sure that they're doing really well. So like, I really believe that saying it, which is, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. So like, I know that as long as they can hit their goals, then I'll be fine. Yeah. So if they're not hitting their goals, or if their productivity isn't as high as it could be, that really bothers me a lot.
What was holding you back from building a real estate team?
I would say fear of the unknowns. I'm very fearful of taking steps in directions that I know nothing about. So like, what held me back is not knowing like that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I feel like sometimes maybe I'm a little too analytical. Sometimes I feel like I need to know that it's going to work before I'll start going in that direction. So sometimes I need to practice working with a little bit more blind faith.
Okay. What's the best advice you've ever received about business?
Track. Track.
Numbers.
Yeah. I honestly think as long as you can track everything, you're going to be fine, because your business will tell you if it's doing well or it's not, and then if it's either working or it's not. So you got to throw it out. You can test things all the time, but it's just like you need to be able to hold everything accountable based on your tracking measures. So that's as simple as it is.
Very cool. Can you share one of your personal daily or weekly habits which you think contributes to your success?
So this is actually something I implemented recently that we had on one of our calls. I was mentioning to you that I was getting like really stressed out and like just had a lot of things going on that I just was taking up a lot of mind space. You recommended this book here. I think I took it with me on my vacation, but you recommended a book, and in the book it mentions to go ahead and write down whatever is going on in your mind. Like just whatever it is, it's almost like just journal, to-do lists, things that are going on in your business, things that you want to accomplish, goals that may come up, whatever comes out. But for the first couple of minutes of your day, just write down anything that comes to your mind. And that made such a big difference because like literally like we started doing that and it freed up everything. It was kind of like I can see clear now. Everything's off of my plate, like off of my mind. It feels like my biggest stress and like anxiety was coming from like not getting certain things done or thinking that I'm forgetting certain pieces or not giving attention to things that I thought were maybe even a little important. So once I started writing everything down, I feel like I can come back to it. I feel like it feels like it freed up a lot of like memory.
Yeah, very cool. Morning pages is what writing in the morning is called. And the book was Tribe of Mentors, wasn't it, by Tim Ferriss?
Yeah, no, I think it's
Tools of Titans.
Tools of Titans, yeah. Tools of Titans.
Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss. And there's a chapter in there called Morning Pages, and that's where that came.
Yeah, I thought I had it in here. I wanted to show it, but I guess not.
It's big. It's like
yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah, it's really good. Very cool. And that's one thing I think everybody's probably catching from the call, but Angel is a very good implementer. So if we talk about something on a call, you put your head down and you do it. You may have to know, like you said, you're analytical, so you may have to know more numbers or facts, or, you'll do your research, but then you take action. And I think that's something that, sometimes I struggle with as well, taking action on. So if there's anything that, as a realtor or a business owner, if you're having trouble put into place, do the research that you need to so you are comfortable making the decision. So if you've had a conversation with your coach or somebody else or in the community, like Angel said, he reaches out to the community to get more answers and so that he can feel comfortable going forward. But I think that's a big aha I took from our call today is I knew you relied on other people in the community to find out what they're doing, and then on our calls as well. But just hearing you say that today, it was like, yes, that's right. You're utilizing B-School as a whole, which sounds like has made a difference for you.
Yeah, I think it's being resourceful, right? So like I think the key is being resourceful. So like all the information for what you want to learn and what you want to do is already out there. So never try to be like the person that's innovating and trying to figure things out, right? I think Lars talked about it. I was following Lars for a while before I actually signed up. And one of the things he said is don't chase squirrels. Someone else is out there testing this stuff out. If they're doing it and it starts working and they can show me actual numbers, then I'll implement it. That's what he said, right? So that really stuck with me. One of the things I started doing is I started focusing on only doing, like it's a rule that I set in my business and in my entire life. It's if someone else hasn't confirmed that it works, if I don't confirm it with like at least 3 different people that are doing it at high levels that can show me that like the specifics of how it's working, like a set med signed and like closings and stuff like that, and they're not and like from a reliable source, right? I'm not going to implement it. I'll keep it in the back burner. I'll write it down. It'll be something that maybe I can look back into and check back into. But I need to see that there's actual numbers to prove what you're saying, and I need it from a couple of different people too.
Yeah.
And then I'll try it out, and then I'll put my numbers to it as well.
Yeah, and I love that. Really, really verifying the source and verifying it with some other people, and then finding out, is it profitable? You know, some people will say, oh, I've sold a ton of homes on something, but really verifying it and finding out before you're jumping in head first.
Yeah, don't worry about trying to like innovate or figure out the new thing or try to be the person that's like coming up with any cool idea and doing something different. I think just focus on being really, really resourceful, because I think that's going to be a lot more profitable. You know, if you're always working with stuff that you've proved out, and all the information and everything that you need to know, someone else has already tried it out and is already doing it. So find those people and you'll be just fine.
That's awesome.
And I think that's one thing that I've done really well. Because even like for the flips as well, like I went out and I found like the guy that's doing the most flips in like all of LA County. That's my marketplace, right? And I went over and I shadowed him and I talked to him about his systems and what he has in place and what's working for him and like what margins he was using to make sure that he was always profitable, which was a lot better than what my initial plan was. Like, oh yeah, like eyeball it. Oh yeah, I think that works. Right? Like that was my process for doing flips before. Once I like modeled and took his process, like everything started like boom, 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 boom. It was great. So all the information that you need is out there.
Yeah, very cool. Angel, if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
Start modeling things out sooner. So like if I could do everything again, like right from the beginning, I would just make sure that I was focusing on number one. Just that I think that keyword is just resourcefulness. Resourcefulness and then tracking. It's kind of like those two things right there.
Yeah.
Start off with that. When I first got started, I know that like I would try to do things that were a little bit different because I thought like, oh yeah, I need to do something different that nobody else is doing to be able to have things that nobody else has. And that's true maybe to some extent, but in all reality, you know, doing 100, 200 in this case, like there's so many agents doing 300, 400, 500, 1,000 transactions a year. You don't have to do anything new. I mean, I think you're going to be pretty happy with doing somewhere in between.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Angel, we have so enjoyed you just digging in, letting us, you know, pick your brain. We're going to get to some specific client questions here, so hang on with us. But I just wanted to tell you that, you know, everything you've shared today is really going to help people who are struggling in their business or maybe are just wondering how to take their business to the next level. And I love your two keywords, tracking, resourcefulness, and I think one other one is simplicity. Like it doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to involve 1,000 things.
Yeah.
Do what you do well and stick there.
Yeah, that's actually another one that I forgot to mention. Simplicity is key. I've gone out and I've made things really complicated for myself sometimes, and then I realized that was like a big failure, right? Like whenever you make things too complicated, you confuse everybody around you and yourself, and then the systems get so hard to track, and it goes nuts. Keep it super simple. Have like the rule of 5. If there's anything that involves more than the number 5, like if I'm tracking more than 5 things, there's an issue, right? If I want to know like how my agents are converting, I need to keep it simple, like set net signed, right? Like I love that. But if there's more than 5 of anything, it's too complicated.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you for everything, sharing your wisdom. All right, I'm going to open it up to questions here. One question is, what kind of numbers do your agents have to hit? Is that an easy question for you to answer? Are there just like, how many set met signed and dials? Maybe go there.
So they have to do 30 calls on follow-up us, which is basically all going to be follow-up calls. Then they have to do 20 Mojo contacts per day minimum. So Mojo contacts, basically, that means that they're going to do probably like 150 calls on Mojo to get those 20 contacts. And then 30 calls on follow-up us, which is about 10 contacts. So in total, they'll average out about 30 contacts a day at a bare minimum. I've got some high achievers in here that are doing like 70 contacts per day. So one guy that's doing 70 contacts a day, he's just crushing it. So those are the 2 big ones. Overdue follow-ups, I track to make sure that nobody has any overdue follow-ups. That's a daily thing as well. And then also that basically they don't have more than 100 leads in their pipeline.
Okay, very cool. And you're using follow-up boss. But the buckets and everything that you have set up so the agents know who to call through, can you explain where those are set up? Are those set up in Mojo?
Say that again. Let me see. I don't know if I understand.
You have the buckets set up for them. You mentioned that you have buckets for them to call through. So there'll be a bucket of probate that needs to be called today, a bucket of whatever.
Oh, yeah. So this is kind of cool. So, talking about simplicity, I have two different places people can call. They can call on follow-up us, right? Like we have to do our 30 calls on follow-up us and then 20 contacts on Mojo. The 30 calls on follow-up us are all follow-up, right? So they're doing our priority list is what there are, P1s, right? So new leads, attempted leads, recently active leads, and so on. And so we have 3 or 4 different lists that we call them there. On Mojo, we basically have one list to call. So I compiled everything like notice of defaults, notice of sales, probates, like anything that we're calling, it's all in one list. That way we don't have like, I didn't want them to have like 6, 7, 8 different lists that they have to learn. I want them to focus on just delivering one script and using one script that's universal that they could use on every call with any client, whether it's the notice of sale, whether it's a probate, whether it's not necessarily an expired, but like just listed, just sold, anything.
Awesome. And we're going to get this question, so I'm just going to ask you before we get it. What's the universal script?
It's a hot market script. So it's basically, hi, I was calling for Stacy. Stacy, my name's Angel. I'm a realtor. Maybe you can help me out. There's been a lot of interest here in this neighborhood. I was just curious to see when you might be considering selling your property. And then go on to a couple of different qualifying questions. But that's like the open line.
Very cool. Very cool. One question that we got is, how do you handle knowing and hearing there are other ways, products, to do what you're doing and knowing it could be better, more efficient, or cheaper?
Well, you only know if it's better, cheaper, and more efficient by tracking, right? So basically, you can make those decisions if it makes business sense to move over to a different product, if the numbers just are so clear that you can't deny them, right? The other thing you have to look at is how much is going to mess up your process. So there's like kind of like a little bit of both, right? You kind of have to follow your gut a little bit, but make sure that you're using your numbers to lead with the numbers, but then follow your gut on what it tells you to do afterwards.
Very cool.
Once you see the verified data.
Where did you learn the rule of 5? Did you come up with that, or is there any reference someone can look at if they want to know more about the rule of 5? Or is this like trademarked Angel Garcia?
No, nothing that I have is trademark. I steal like everything. But like the thing is that sometimes I'll think that they're my ideas, but I heard it somewhere. I just don't know where I heard it from. But somewhere I heard that more than 5 of anything is just too complicated. Like I think even in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, it says that you only want to like reach out, like you only want to have 5 people report to you in any business, right? Well, as far as like calling lists, like you don't want to have your agents remember more than 5 scripts, right? You don't want to have more than 5 calling lists. You don't want to track more than 5 different things, because then it's too complicated. And I don't know about you guys, but like if you have to focus on more than 5 things at a time, you're probably going nuts.
Probably not focused on them.
Yeah. And that's just something that just works for me.
Yeah. Do your agents have incentives for meeting goals or overperforming? You know how you mentioned you have one guy that's making 70 contacts when the goal is really 30. Are there incentives, or is it just they're going to get the business because they're putting in the work?
They're going to get the business because they're going to put in the work, yeah. I will have like contests, like whenever I see if I'm tracking set, met, signed, one of the things that you actually taught me to do was if we know that we're running a little bit low on something, I'll use like the horse race contest on CTE to motivate them to do something. So I've done like Amazon gift cards, or I've done like I'm gonna take you to a nice steakhouse type of thing. Like if our set to met is low, or if our contacts numbers is low, like we've had contacts challenges, things like that. Horse race contest, but it's not like a monthly thing. It's just kind of whenever I notice that there's an issue.
Yeah, very cool. On average, how long, what does the agent's day look like? Because they're making a lot of calls and they're making their 30 contacts, but they're on a dialer. Can you talk about, like, do you have new business development time set up? What does that look like? How long is it taking the agents to make their numbers?
Yeah.
And if they're not making their numbers, do they keep calling? Talk about that a little bit.
So we have like a call schedule that we follow. So like the time that's like mandatory in our team is basically the morning time. It's like the golden rule. I think that's the same with most teams out there as well, right? So like 8 to 11 is strictly calls, right? So I turned the camera on a minute ago. You can see that they were on the phone, right? So everybody's got to be here at 8 a.m. and then we do a role play. After the role play, and that's about 30 minutes, then we jump on the phones and basically just focusing on generating new appointments up until about 11 o'clock. After 11 o'clock, now we're focusing on just directly following up with hot leads that we know are going to be doing something soon. And then in the entire evening, it's very simple. It's the afternoons and evenings is basically just looking for new business again if we're not already going on other appointments. Like that's pretty simple. What we did find though is that there's like good times to call. We found that, and like just looking at the data from Mojo, it shows you 12 to 2 is actually a great time to call. So like we're getting 2 or 3 times the number of people on the phone at that time than calling at like, let's say actually like 11 o'clock or like 10 o'clock. The other time that's really good for us has been like right around that 4 to 6 p.m. time. Even like 7 p.m. Is pretty decent. But we use it as like a basis to just know what the best time to call is.
Yeah. At 12 to 2, though, are they generally calling more of the hot leads, or are they still doing new business development? Just wondering if it is a true correlation or if it's a different lead source even that's being called 12 to 2.
No, so 12 to 2 is basically more so lead follow-up time. Like 11 o'clock up till about 12 o'clock is like lead follow-up. It'll bleed into sometimes a little bit in the afternoon. But the 12 to 2 time, as far as like what I was tracking to see when we're getting the most people on the phone, that was basically to Mojo. On Mojo, you can see like your calls to contact ratio, and it goes up dramatically at that time. So if anybody's using Mojo, you can see all those numbers and how they break down and who you're calling and stuff too. So we just found that 12 to 2 is a really, really good time to call.
And when do your agents call their sphere of influence and past clients? When do they do that follow-up?
That one is just kind of something that we're not too good at doing it as often as we'd like. That's something that we got to get a little bit better at. And it's kind of like things that we brought up on, like I brought it up in the past where we'll do it like on a one-day type of shot. We're like, hey guys, we're only going to be working on calling our sphere today, or we're only going to be calling like our friends and family. Let's get a list of all of them, and then tomorrow we're just going to burn through the list. But we haven't been very religious about doing that.
Sure, very cool. And generally, agents are going on appointments in the afternoon and evening. Is that what you said? But if they don't have appointments, then they do the extra calling.
Yeah.
All right. Any last questions? Angel, if anybody has questions, can they reach out to you in our community on Real Estate B School Facebook page? And I'm sure they would love to glean some more of your great information. You've shared a lot with us today.
Cool. Yeah. Feel free to reach out to me if you guys. I see that there's someone that wants the call script. I'll send that out.
Yeah. Or can you post it on the Facebook page in the files?
Sure.
Awesome. That would be perfect. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Angel. We appreciate it. Everybody have a great week. And don't forget to get your agents on the lead conversion calls. Like Angel mentioned, that's a big part of what they do, script practicing, role playing. So jump on to those calls. Thank you so much, Angel. We will see you all later. Bye.